Hello, my name's Olivia and I'm a tutor at Bright Sparks. And today I'm going to cover a topic, part of grade 12 biology, specifically the unit on the nervous system. And I'm just going to break down the parts of all neurons. So what a neuron looks like, some of its functions at this stage, before moving on to something more complex, such as covering how nerve impulses travel across the body using neurons. So we're going to start with the parts of the neurons. I'm going to point them out here on this diagram. So we have the cell body, which is the round part of the cell. Then we have the dendrites, which are these finger-like projections coming out of the cell body. And then we have the axon, which is this long tail coming out of the cell body, and the axon terminals, which is where the axon ends. So to go into a little bit more detail as to what these structures do and how they work together, we'll start with the cell body. It contains the nucleus, which is pictured here in gray, and you may know this from previous courses in biology, but I'll go over it with you again. The nucleus contains the genetic information for the cell. So that's where you can find its DNA, its genetic code. Now, the dendrites, which are the finger-like projections that I mentioned on the previous slide, these guys are receiving information from neurons around them. So this is where information is being brought into the neuron, and this is through an electrical impulse. And so the dendrites are going to send that electrical impulse to the cell body. Now, from the cell body, that electrical impulse will be shared to the axon, which is this tail-like part of the neuron. And the axon is going to send that impulse further down to its axon terminals. And these terminals are going to connect with the dendrites of the next neuron. So the neurons they all work together and they're in a complex system. So what happens is, instead of having one neuron that starts from my head and goes all the way down to my toes, there's going to be so many neurons linked together, traveling down that path, so that my brain can send a signal to move my toes. And so the way they're able to work together cohesively is by sharing that impulse from dendrites to axon terminals to the dendrites of the next neuron, and the line continues. And along the axon as well, there can be a white coat of fatty protein called myelin, and this covers some of the axons. So it's kind of like a tightly wrapped blanket around the axon. And here it's pictured in orange, but usually we will describe it as white, and it'll be shown as so in some diagrams. And that just allows the impulse to be spread faster and more efficiently. And that way it stays at a good strength there to travel down the whole axon and to make it to the terminals. So that briefly goes over the structure so far. And then to clarify, I've shared some practice questions that we'll do together, just to go over the topic and see how you're feeling with the content.